Welcome to Built to Adapt at SpringOne Platform 2017. My name is Ciara Byrne and I'm here with Jeff Kelly talking to some of the top technology leaders of some of the largest and most iconic companies in the world about how they're changing the way that they build software and consequently their businesses. So our next guest is Jim Shingler, who is the Director of Developer Transformation at Cardinal Health. So you're very welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Now, Cardinal Health is a very large company. It's like 50,000 employees, I think.
Yeah, there's a large number of people. We're a Fortune 15 company that a lot of people haven't heard of.
Wow. And you do everything from nuclear medicine to systems for pharmacy reordering.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand, your transformation team is 3 people?
Yeah, it's a small team. We started off, we were in Fuse, which is the innovation labs area for Cardinal Health, and we focus a lot on Lean Agile and DevOps over there. And as we were successful there, the intent was for Fuse to always be the tip of the spear and then to bring it back to the main enterprise IT unit as a whole. And so there were 3 of us that's our charge. We've been brought over, and our department's relatively new. We've only been there a year. So we're a mighty 3. And growing though. So based on the successes that we've had, the organization is figuring out, how do we accelerate this? How do we staff this up bigger?
Well, how did you decide where to start transforming a company of 50,000 people?
Well, that's an interesting question. You've got to see where the real problems are and who is really interested in trying to do something about it, right? And we were fortunate enough that we'd already been doing some consulting with a couple areas before we were formed, and we used them as our starting place in working with the company. And it happened to be nuclear medicine was one of them, and they've had a great success with the stuff that they've done. And then the other place we're working out is out of the e-commerce area, and they're having some really good successes as well.
Well, tell us what's happening in nuclear medicine, because that's a very interesting area.
Yeah, so it's kind of scary. You think about it. We see a lab when you walk down there, and there's like nuclear medicine. You wonder if you're going to glow at night. But no, it's pretty amazing. It's the work that they do, and that they had been primarily a .NET shop before, and then one of the guys, Ben Buxton, a really good guy, as we were doing this PCF and bringing this on, he stood up and said, "Yeah, let's try doing." Spring Boot and PCF, and he picked it all up in his team and developed new applications out and building out pipelines with concourse and just having a lot of success. And they're doing it in very much of an agile fashion, which works out really good. And the business has been really happy with what they're delivering. They just had a big go live just about 2 weeks ago, and so things are going well, and it's pretty exciting to see the work that they're doing. They're able to get things through and ready to production much faster than they were able to before.
I was just going to mention, what were some of the things that were driving the transformation to begin with? I mean, what are some of the technology trends, maybe some of the customer trends that are impacting your industry that prompted Cardinal Health to take another look at how they're building software and make the decision that they need to kind of reinvent how they're building software so they can be faster, respond to customers faster, those kinds of things?
Yeah, a lot of it came down to our time to value wasn't where we wanted it to be. And like a lot of other big companies, we've got one of everything, right? And we've developed these processes and such in a time period that everything was on-prem, and it just wasn't as flexible as what we needed it to be. And so that's where Fuse had spun off to try to experiment with some of these new approaches on how to do things. And so with that came the cloud, right, and us moving out to the cloud. And we were starting to stand up our own paths even. We were building it out. And then I think it was 2 years ago at one of the shows we were at, it was like this PCF thing. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what's this? And we started looking at it and we said, oh my gosh, let's stand up.
What you've been looking for.
It was exactly what we've been looking for. And it's like, we decided, we want to stand on shoulders of giants rather than be the giant, right? So, their commitment to what we're doing with Cloud Foundry is just phenomenal. And, it makes a lot of business sense for us to leverage that than try to build our own. It'd be a little bit arrogant of us to think that we can do a better job than the hundreds and thousands of people that are focused in this area.
Right, and it lets your developers focus on what they do best,
right,
and less on some of the infrastructure concerns and other things. You can focus on the business value.
Right, it's so refreshing to be able to just, you need a server to try and experiment on something, and you develop something out and do a CF push, and bam, there it is up and running. I've been at other companies where I wish this wasn't the case, but it took months to get a virtualized server, right? And so now I'm at the point where if I got an experiment or something that's on my mind, it reduces my inhibitions, right? I can just go try something as an experiment, spin it up, run it, see the results, and go, okay, this is in the direction that I want to go. So it dramatically reduces and shortens what it takes to figure things out.
Right, and we've talked to some other folks today about that idea of experimenting more, but that also requires a bit of a change in mindset, giving developers permission to fail, if you will, to take chances, take some experiments, make some experiments, obviously iterate on those things that are working, but how did you approach that part of it in terms of changing the mindsets and making people understand it's okay to fail, it's okay to experiment?
Yeah. Well, it gets down to a lot of that when Fuse was really easy, because that's the way Fuse was set up to the very beginning, is to go try to figure out something. And the idea is to shorten, it's always been, shorten that time frame up as much as possible. It's about accelerating the learning is what we really start to focus on some of this. And it takes people a little while to get comfortable with that, if they've been used to doing development a different way. And that's where a lot of times what we're doing is we're embedding coaching into the teams, so that as they are heading to this direction, not just, congratulations, go be successful, right? Is we're embedding coaching into the teams to help coach them and show them that this is okay. And, don't spend more time thinking about something than you should. Go do it, right? Just go try. Sometimes the fastest answer to a problem is to try to do something, right? Is to try to experiment. Uncle Bob, right? And he talks about experimental coding, right? That's what we're talking about. Don't try to outthink of it. What we do today is way more complex than we did 20, 30 years ago. There's so many moving parts. We just cannot hold all the information in our minds and try to outthink this thing. That was a way of doing things when we had scarcity in our resources, right? We don't have that problem anymore. So let's use better approaches for doing things. And that's really what we've gotten down to. If I can go write some code and experiment and see does this work the way I expect it to, versus trying to think about it too long. So that's the way we've gotten to people to move in that direction. As well, let's try an experiment, and it's okay. And if it's wrong, then that's great. I learned something faster than I would have otherwise, right? And so it's a little bit of a mind shift, and it takes some people a little while to get used to it. But once they get used to it, they get addicted to the speed. Is what ends up happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was going to say, you mentioned, sorry to cut you off there, Kira, but you mentioned the embedded coaching. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What did that actually look like?
So typically when we stand up a team, there'll be at least 4 devs. We say typically, because you want to do it in pairs. So we end up with typically 2 to 4 pairs is what we'll see in a team. And then we help establish an iteration. We don't call them Scrum Masters, we call them iteration managers, because we think Scrum Masters is too confining of a concept. And then we have typically our product owner and some of the analysts. And so we form what we call a first team, and that's typically going to be your product owner, your iteration manager, your lead analyst, and your tech lead, right? And we try to think of them as the C-suite for that particular team and or product that they're responsible for. And then you've got the rest of the development and analyst staff that goes with them to help them be successful. So then typically what we do is it's kind of nice because the 3 of us, we got 3 different disciplines. My coworkers, Mary, she is really focused on the analyst and in the testing space. And making sure that we're doing things there well. So she's helping coach and teach people how to write user stories and how to embed acceptance criteria into the user story. Bev, she's their iteration manager. She keeps me straight and honest a lot of times because I'm on the engineering side, right? I focus more on the engineering side, and DevOps is where I focus. So the 3 of us will typically be involved and embedded into a team. And then we typically are doing somewhere between 2 and 3 teams at any given time, helping them out.
That's interesting, because you then have a majority female transformation team.
Yeah.
Cardinal Health as well, which is quite unusual. We don't see that too often.
Yeah, well, Cardinal Health is a big supporter of women in IT, and do everything that we can. That's one of our big practices that we've got inside of there. The communities that we support is the women IT community. And we do a lot in bringing them even into Fuse and encouraging young women to get into the IT field as well.
Well, I can imagine healthcare would actually be pretty attractive combination, you know, the engineering and healthcare,
Yeah.
because women generally like to do something that's kind of meaningful, so it's you know, you have a selling point from that point of view.
Oh, we do, and some of the stuff that we're building out is going a long way. We're working on some stuff where we're putting devices in the consumer's home to help them live there and stay there longer and be healthy and try to help them along the way. And that's an attractive thing for people, right?
But to get back to coaching, one of the things you told us before was that retrospectives were particularly important.
Yeah, so we think that retrospectives is probably the key practice out of everything you do, because that's how you get better, right? And so that's one of the things that we do a lot to focus on is getting better. And what we do in our retrospectives is, you know, you get the pigs and the chickens, right? And so we say that, you know, management, this is not for you, this is for the team, right? And so we keep all the directors out of there, we keep their managers out of there. This is for the team and them to look back and go, hey, this last iteration, how did things go? You know, did we have any areas that were challenging for us? What do we need? What would we like to focus on to get better? And then we itemize those items out, and those actually becomes cards in the backlog for things to be worked on in the next sprint.
Was this something that people found difficult in the beginning to talk about, like what went wrong? And because sometimes in organizations there's blame associated with admitting that something went wrong.
Yeah, we've never experienced any of that, right? No, I mean, every company experiences that. And what it takes is, that's why you have to have the embedded coaches, right? Because this is one area that Bev does a lot in helping coach them out as iteration manager coach. Because we typically have an iteration, starting out, we'll have the iteration manager leading the retrospective. So they do a lot of work to try to draw out this information. And they can ask, as an iteration manager, they see and observe a lot of things. So sometimes when things aren't coming out, they can ask some pointed questions. Say, hey, I thought I saw something, you know, what about that?
Yep.
And it takes them, their first one, everybody's always very reserved, right? But there's some games, you know, that you can play that to help draw out some of that information. And our iteration managers, you know, are all trained up on how to do that and draw it out. But once people see that it's safe, I mean, that's the big thing, is the safety,
yes.
right? Once they see that it's safe, it's no longer an issue. Yeah.
You also said something interesting to us when we talked to you before the interview, so that you see Agile as a more humane way of doing development. So can you explain that to us?
Yeah, that's really important to me. I've been doing IT a little longer than I'd like to admit, and I can honestly say, but before I started doing IT, I had hair. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the way we've done some of the development in the past, you know, you've got people working crazy, insane hours just doing absolutely ridiculous things, you know, trying to do things. And it's because they had good intentions, but they never even realized that with what they were doing, they were actually making the situation worse, right? They were hiding the fact of what their true velocity was. And with Agile, I think that's one of the things that really helps is pairing is exhausting. If you do an 8-hour pairing, you're tired, and it's hard. And what we want people to do is we want them to put in a solid day and then go home and relax. Because at the end of the day, if they sit there and keep doing this and doing this and doing this, you know, they're going to become no good to themselves, no good to their family. And then this is actually kind of selfish, but at the point in time that happens, most likely you're no good to us either,
Yep.
right? So you need that balance, and that's why I think that Agile, that's what I like about it. It's very realistic. You know, we let people, you know, if the product owner wants to change, you know, the track, that's awesome. We say, well, we're in the middle of the iteration. You want to slot it in for next iteration as to what you'd like to do different or change. You can. That backlog's yours, right? You can prioritize them in whatever order you want. If the business situation has changed, great, let's change it. And I think the shorter durations and allowing that to happen, it gives us more opportunity for that to happen. And so they become used to it. At another company, I had the product manager for the product I was working on test me. And Shane, I'll work with him anywhere. He's a great guy. And we were talking, he come in, he says, oh my God, he says, fresh stuff, we got to change this. And I go, that's awesome. Can you wait to the end of the iteration? And he goes, yeah. I said, great. He come back to me again. He says, oh my God, something changed. Can you wait to the iteration? He says, no, we really got to get on this. I go, Shane, that's great. Here's what we're already started on. I just ask that you not impact that. Here's the list that we got to do left in the iteration. What would you like to substitute out, right? And it's not. I'm not saying no. I'm giving him the choice, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, this is his system. He owns it, right? We're the general contractors. You know, it's his system, and we got to do what's right for him in the business.
And you also talked about this idea of going to the more product mindset and the teams owning the product from start to finish. Talk a little bit about that change, both in terms of, again, the people aspect of it and the organizational aspect of it, and what has the impact been on the actual end product? Yeah,
so outside of Fuse, this is a relatively new idea that we're introducing into the company, and it's huge organizational change, as you can imagine. Because you're talking about people that have only been responsible from the requirements that have been given to them till dev done, and now we're saying, no, you're going to be responsible from idea into operations, right? That's a bit of a change. And that's a bit of change, process change for the rest of the organization as well, right? Because they're used to handing stuff off and throwing stuff over the wall, right? So that's where a lot of the DevOps stuff that I'm working on is trying to break down those barriers and helping the team have the skills and the things that they need to be responsible from idea all the way through into production and monitoring of the application in production as well to get those feedback cycles coming back in. This is very new for Cardinal, and that's part of what we're figuring out right now is, you know, the different teams. Not everybody deserves to have this, right? This is a big commitment. And if you've got a product that you're only changing once a year, well, I don't know if you need that, right?
Right.
But your mainstream products that you're really working on, this has got a lot of benefit for the communication cycles and feedback cycles and helping people be responsible.
I would imagine it also gives the team a bigger sense of ownership and responsibility and pride in ownership, essentially.
Yeah.
And when they own the entire software development lifecycle and the product, essentially, versus just kind of doing their small slice and then moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big feedbacks for the business on this is as we do this, it helps us grow subject matter experts in the different areas, right? When you're not doing a product team kind of mentality, you're going over here, you're going over there, you're going over here, and you don't necessarily learn as much about the business as when you're focused in a given area. And you learn an awful lot about the business in working with the business partners and the different business analysts. And I think that's one of the hidden benefits is you grow subject matter experts now that know an awful lot about the business.
So I know it's pretty early still in your transformation. You've only been working on this for a year, but what kind of results have you seen already?
We're seeing some really great results as far as being able to get things into production is our big thing. Like the nuclear guys, what they did before would have easily taken them 9 months to be able to get something into production. You know, a brand new system that they stood up and they just did it in a function of about 3 months, and it was phenomenal. It was a huge success for what they've done. So that's the biggest thing is we're seeing the reduction in time to value is what we're seeing. And on the development side, we're seeing people be a lot more satisfied as well because they don't feel as much process-based resistance to getting things done, right? At the end of the day, that's, you know, developers and engineers, they all want to see their thing running in production. And, you know, they get it functional and then they run into walls and, you know, it takes a lot of commitment to push through those walls. And with this new change in the way we're doing things, the processes we're changing, it's lessened the resistance and it's actually made them more responsible. Now, they still have to be accountable to all of the same requirements. I mean, we've got PHI information and we've got to protect, and that's not negotiable. That is, you know, but we've got some really good, you know, standards around how do we do that. You know, such things as, you know, we're very, very serious about you do not have PHI, real PHI data outside of production. That's just a non-negotiable. And they're now realizing that they've got to be responsible for that. And so, okay, if I want these capabilities, then I also have to do these other things to be able
Take on this responsibility.
to take it on,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think we're close on time, but I'm curious, as you look forward, maybe let's say we're back here a year from now, what are some of the things you hope to have accomplished? What are some of the things on your, agenda list?
Yeah, so looking at the year ahead, the big thing for us right now is spinning up more teams and more of a focus on DevOps, right? Everybody's focused on DevOps today and age, right? But our big thing is not DevOps from a process as much as it is DevOps from being able to deliver value and focusing on the results. We want to be able to get things out in the consumer's hands faster and better with the same or better security and quality on what we do. And I think that this movement that we see right now with a lot of what we got going on, it's going to put a lot of that control back into the developers' hands, and they're responsible for it. And so I think that's going to help us move things forward, and I think we're going to see just more and more stuff. We've got an objective where we're going to put 70% of what we do in the cloud. 30% of it we can't.
Wow.
Just because it's on-prem type stuff that you got to do it a certain way. But we've got some really great security people that are doing a fabulous job keeping us secure in everything that we do, and Cardinal Health is very, very serious about that.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. I hope you're having a good time here at the show.
I am. I always do. This is, I guess, this is probably about 6 or 7 for me. I lost track, but it's always a great show.
You're a veteran then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my head always hurts at the end of the show of all the new information.
In a good way.
In a good way. In a good way.
I hear you. Well, again, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for watching.
Awesome.